Welcome back, listeners. We're going to unpack chapter 6 this week, Allyship Storytelling. So, some key facts on storytelling and why it's so important. One, it's just part of our evolutionary traits as human beings that have roamed the planet for a few 100,000 years. We've learned to tell stories to pass down important information for our survival, lessons learned, berries not to eat, how to manage a predator. And so that's why stories stick in our minds 20 times more than facts or figures. Storytelling can be an important vehicle for social influence and social change and social justice. So, how does storytelling work? If I were a leader in an organization and had positional or influential power, as we've discussed, or big parts of how power is identified in an organization. It can be proxy to power, it can be through identity, it can be through social influence, it can be through position. What I would recommend is add storytelling as a tool into your overall leadership toolkit. And I might start with a few prompts to uncover my own stories, my career stories, my ally stories. If I wanted to be a more inclusive leader, if I wanted to be more of an ally to folks in my organization and to my team, I would start with, hey, what's something maybe vulnerable that's happened to me, a time when I didn't feel a sense of inclusion, and I didn't feel like I belonged, or I felt, viscerally different from a group. That's an empathy exercise that I think when done, um, not in a self-deprecating way, but in a honest and truthful and vulnerable, genuinely vulnerable way, you can really open up the doors for other people to feel comfortable sharing their stories. And people aren't going to expect you to have stories like that, especially if you kind of resemble the power group. They might be surprised, they might be taken back. It's going to deepen connection. Very rarely does storytelling backfire. I think we're worried we share a vulnerable story, and someone's going to attack us. That's just so rare that that would actually happen. More often, people meet that vulnerability with vulnerability back with themselves and empathy. And so storytelling also releases these hormones in our body, things like oxytocin, reduces cortisol, the stress hormone. And so there's a reason we tell kids bedtime stories. It eases them into the night, quiets their fears, and kind of it takes them to another mental place. So storytelling can really create bridges to dimensions of difference, different lived experiences, different identities, things like microaggressions and othering behaviors that tend to teach people to kind of minimize or maximize traits about themselves to fit in with dominant group characteristics or behaviors. More often, folks that reside in those historically marginalized communities. So storytelling can help provide windows into other lived experiences that are unique from your own, and also mirrors of, oh, wow, I thought we were so different, but we're also have this in common, that shared experience. So, as a leader, kind of take an inventory of some stories you might have, ones that you feel comfortable, that you feel psychologically safe sharing. You don't want to put yourself in an opportunity to re-traumatize yourself if it's something that's you haven't really dealt with or emotionally managed. You also want to be mindful of emotional triggers. Storytelling is really powerful, and the reason it's so powerful is because it turns on that limbic system in our brain that is wired for story, that's all about the emotions and the feels, and not so much that neocortex that's responsible for all that rational thinking. And so stories can go a little wild if you don't have some guardrails around them. And one of the things I would recommend is really thinking about your triggers, your own personal triggers. So I know for me, when I hear a story of injustice, because justice and fairness are very high on my value set, as we've unpacked and understanding our values in chapter 2, this is where that comes in. If something's in violation of your values, it is going to elicit a strong trigger for you, especially if it's something that you see as just completely wrong. If someone has a lot of experience with that, that's not fair. That's not just. That's the world too. So be mindful of your triggers. What are the things before you have like a verbal outburst or an emotional reaction? What are the things that are happening before that? You feel disrespected. You feel someone else is disrespected. You feel someone's not listening. Someone's not respecting your time. All those types of things. Take an inventory of those and think about in the moment when these things happen, because they will happen. Humans are flawed beings, ourselves included. What would a positive reaction look like in that moment? Right? And so kind of know your emotional range in a storytelling situation, in a vulnerable sharing situation, and just be mindful of your triggers and try to pause and create space between the trigger and your response. Just that pause, that breath can slow it down before we do something we might say or do and regret potentially. The other thing with storytelling is modeling. So we can't wave a magic wand and make everyone else allies and inclusive around us. You can certainly model it though. So modeling is one of the best teachers of behavior. And in fact, author of The Good Guys, I love David Smith and Brad Johnson's work. They've been a part of helping me write this book and many books actually. So kudos to them. They're amazing allies. And they're doing research for a new book about allyship and systemic allyship, which is riveting. And they found that modeling alone wasn't enough, but modeling allyship behavior plus storytelling can kind of help create more bridges. So why is that the case? Well, this phenomenon of like senior leaders just, act inclusive and it will just trickle down through the organization. It doesn't really work because not everybody has visibility to those senior leaders. Middle managers are still kind of stuck in the middle in that persuadable camp. Like, well, what could I possibly do? This isn't resonating with my leadership style. And so for all those reasons, stories can be that vessel paired with modeling. So I can model myself sharing stories and managing my emotions and showing up inclusively, reaching out and hoping to be an ally. But then I can also tell stories of times when I got it right, times when I got it wrong, a time when I had a positive impact, a time when maybe it didn't land the way I wanted to. So you can kind of tell these variety of different stories to model and to show the behavior that you're modeling in addition if someone doesn't have privy to watching you in action. Because leading by example is great, but it's not quite enough to close that gap, especially if somebody doesn't see themselves as the type of leader you are. And we're not monoliths, we have our individualist traits and behaviors. And so storytelling plus modeling can really work. So think about the stories you can tell as a leader. Maybe try one on at your next team one-on-one meeting, team building session. If I do a storytelling exercise before a team building session when I'm facilitating, I always give the prompt in advance to not surprise folks and to give our introverted more time to process folks, a level playing field for that. So if you are encouraged to take storytelling to your team, just a pro tip, make sure you give them a heads up on that and share why you're doing that, right? So it doesn't come as a surprise. You're like, what is she trying to get out of me? We want to build trust with storytelling. So I hope you're enjoying the series. I know I am, and we'll unpack the organizational strategy starting next.